What's going on, guys? It's hot and humid here in Akron, Ohio. This is Josh Vega with podcast number 2 for Nerdlife. I'm shooting it live out here, outside in the sunny, humid weather. It's very nice here in Akron, Ohio. A couple things we'll go over today. The Apple and Samsung fight has taken to a whole new level, as well as some new patents going out to Apple. Not only that, we'll talk Amazing Spider-Man and a little bit more about myself. I'm Josh Vega again, Nerdlife podcast number 2. Here's the intro music.
Yo, check out this podcast. Yo, check out this podcast. It's Josh Vega. It's Josh Vega. Yeah. Nerdlife. Josh Vega talks tech. You better come correct and show the podcast respect. It's so fresh, no need for an apology. Josh Vega knows about the latest technology. He's also gotta be a comic book pro. Listen close, it's dope. He's really got a good show. Yo. Movie reviews, good news, you can find it, man. When he shoot it, it sticks like Spider-Man. Come and try it, man, yeah. Said come and try it, man, yeah. Nerdlife.
Hello, my name is Josh Vega, once again. This is Nerdlife podcast number 2. A little bit about myself, a little bit more about the podcast and why I decided to do it. I'm into technology, I'm into comic books, I'm into movies, I'm into sports. There's a whole bunch of things that I'm just into. I like to throw it together, want to talk about it, want to talk specifics on it. A couple subjects a week, maybe twice a week, depending on how I feel. I do have a new Twitter handle, want to get that out of the way, specifically for the podcast. It is Nerdlife Josh. You can find me on Twitter under Nerdlife Josh. I'll tweet some different stories from comic books, movies, things that I find interesting. You might have comic books one day, movies another, different things for different days. Another thing, you guys saw the intro music as well as the logo that I'm using for the podcast. Let me know what you guys think about that. Trying to gather my thoughts here. A little bit about myself, again. I'm a bus driver. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I'm a bus driver. I'm also a voice actor. I do voice acting on the side, kind of, trying to get really into that. I've got my own home recording studio, as you saw in the last video. It's another thing. This is actually posted on a new page. You guys are sitting here going, number 2, where's number 1? Number 1 is on my personal channel, the Vega McClintock channel. This is on the Nerdlife 2012 channel on YouTube, so a little bit of change there for the new podcast. Sorry about the wind in the background. Hopefully it doesn't distract from the vocal too much. New logo, knew that. As far as me, bus driver, voice actor, I'm a janitor. I do different things, different jobs. I've been in fast food, I've worked in movie theaters, I've done call center work. It's, just have time, whatever, new work. Let's get to the Amazing Spider-Man review. I want to talk briefly about Amazing Spider-Man and then get on to, as I was talking about, phones and such. Alright, let's talk Amazing Spider-Man. Since the year 2001, we've seen Spider-Man redone several times. The 2 Ultimate Spider-Man books, making the Ultimate Spider-Man back in the early 2000s. There's a train in the background. Ultimate Spider-Man in the early 2000s, reinventing Peter Parker as a teenager once again, reinventing his nemesis, bad guys, etc. We also saw Spider-Man reinvented more recently in the comic books in the Ultimate line with Miles Morales being the new Spider-Man, the first Spanish Black Spider-Man, so to speak. Very interesting seeing him redone in the comics. Both caught on well, otherwise they wouldn't still be here. Back in 2002, we saw the birth of the Spider-Man film franchise. Spider-Man film franchise starring Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, as well as Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, surfacing here and there throughout all 3 movies. Very interesting to watch him come to the big screen. His origins and whatnot sticking very close to the comic books. The way things flowed through, the comic books were followed pretty closely throughout those. With The Amazing Spider-Man, it does follow that, but in a different way, a broader scale. We're introduced in Amazing Spider-Man, which is essentially a reboot, into Peter Parker's younger life with his parents, their spies, etc., what they went through, what they were doing as scientists and spies back in Peter Parker's early days, thus affecting him in his later years. It was very interesting to see how this movie progressed, see the correlation between Peter Parker and Dr. Kirk Connors. Very interested to see when the second one is released how they correlate everything together, sort of like the original Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3 all work together. I want to see how they do with the Amazing Spider-Man and what they're bringing together with that. Judging by what I saw in the first pictures when we first found out about Amazing Spider-Man, I wasn't impressed. I was one of those people that was skeptical, didn't really know what to think about it. Thought, I'm not going to like it. Am I going to see it? Yeah, I'll see it because I like Spider-Man, but am I going to see it and enjoy it? Probably not. I was thoroughly surprised. Spider-Man was very good. Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield is the guy that plays Peter Parker in Spider-Man. Kind of, dark, gloomy. Obviously what you would go through if you lost your parents, lost your uncle, those kind of things, going through the life that he's had. But when in the spider suit, mixed in with the comedy and such, it was a very interesting movie. Very interesting to watch the character progress and become Spider-Man. Overall, I would give it a 4, maybe 4.25 out of 5 stars. Very good, not as good as Avengers. Saw Avengers earlier this year. Avengers was really good, but you had all the movies leading into Avengers, such as the Hulk movies, the Iron Man movies, Captain America, Thor, all of them going towards Avengers. Now, we're starting a new chapter in the Spider-Man story with Amazing Spider-Man, and hopefully we'll have a big movie like that in the future. It's worth checking out. It's worth going to see, in my opinion. Probably my next movie that I'll give a review on, that I'll see in the theaters, would be The Dark Knight Rises. Other than that, like I said, check it out. In just a moment, we'll take a look at Apple and Samsung, as well as Android phones, and what's going on between those two. So last week, Apple filed an injunction against Samsung and their continuing battle between whether Samsung is ripping off Apple or not. It's debatable on both the ends. However, Apple got a slight victory last week with an injunction in place to halt the sales of the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. Now, this is in addition to some of the other different injunctions that they've had, such as overseas. They've had the stoppage of different Galaxy tabs. Over here, there's been a stop in the US, a stop of the Galaxy 10 being sold because it infringes on Apple's copyrights. I'll give props to Apple. Apple has invented a lot. Apple has done a lot for the cell phone market. I personally am not an Apple fanboy. I carry Android phones. I love Android phones because of the customization. I'll get into that in another video. I'll probably take a whole nother podcast, and not next week because I'll let you know what's going on next week, but maybe the podcast after that, I'll tell you my feelings about Apple as well as Android on that factor. The injunction was filed. Galaxy Nexus is now being sold again, now for sale again. It appears that Google has corrected what Apple was claiming was theirs. Today, however, the court ruling was put in place that they would be allowed to sell the Samsung Galaxy Tab here in the United States, and that there wouldn't be an injunction on it. So, a victory for Samsung in that factor. However, it does appear that Apple has got, as I tweeted earlier today, retweeted from device.com, that they do have another patent given to them by the United States Patent Department, or whatever it's called. Sorry, there's playing off. The U.S. Department of Patents, or whatever it's called. I'm not sure the official name. I'll find out later. As far as them being able to claim they have the patent for water detection in phones. So we'll see how that pans out here soon. with the different phone carriers, not carriers, but companies using that technology, we'll see how Apple handles it in the future. Not to excuse me with the screw-ups and whatnot. Really sorry about that. As I said, probably not this next podcast, because the next podcast, if you didn't know, this weekend is San Diego Comic-Con. I will have my eyes, ears glued to such sites as Newsarama.com, Blaster.com, those kind of sites, keeping an eye on the movies, the cartoons, the toys, the comic books, everything that's coming to San Diego Comic-Con. Arguably, San Diego Comic-Con is the biggest comic convention of the year. I'll have my next podcast will cover some of the things based in there. We know that there's a Carnage storyline coming that involves Carnage, Venom, Scarlet Spider. We know that they're going to be talking about the new relaunch, quote-unquote relaunch, of the Marvel Universe, as well as DC, Image, all those places. We'll have new coverage probably on the new Superman movie that's supposed to come out next year, as well as various other projects coming out. I'll cover those, as well as many other things from San Diego Comic-Con on the next podcast, and probably the podcast after that. We'll get into why I like Android phones better than Apple and my problems with Apple. Till then, I'm Josh Vega. As I said, you can hit me up on Twitter, Nerdlife Josh on Twitter. You can post on here, on Nerdlife 2012 on YouTube, and you can also email me actually at nerdlife2012@gmail.com. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please don't be afraid. You'll have to excuse me editing. I'll get this down. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to leave them either here or on Twitter, or email them to me. I'm Josh Vega once again. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.